This is a production of Cornell University.
Hello everyone, my name is Kensy Rodriguez, and today we're going to talk about harvesting watermelon. I'm here with Steve Reiners. He's a horticulture specialist, and today I want to ask you some questions with Steve, and mainly about watermelon. So sometimes we have the watermelon in our field and we know it's big, but we are not sure when is the right time to harvest. So if you can talk us a little bit about that.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Yeah, watermelon, I think for some people they think of watermelon as something that you can only grow deep in the south where you've got a long growing season and you're going to get a 20 or 30 pound fruit, but we have some beautiful small, we call icebox melons here that are just perfect for a small family or one or two people. The question is, how do you know when this is right? Because if you harvest it too early, you're going to get a very, very bland type of flavor in there as well. And of course, if you leave it on too long, it can start to develop cracks and it can actually start to break down. So when do you do this? Well, if we were a commercial grower, I'd have a little thing called a refractometer, and I'd put it in there and a few fruit and get an idea of how much the sugars are, but a home gardener's not going to do that. So there's a couple of things that I look for. One is, we always talk about a tendril on a watermelon, and you can see here's a tendril. And it's similar to what peas have, and it helps them climb on things. And we always say when that tendril that's closest to the melon, which would be this one, when that starts to brown, that's usually a good sign that this is getting pretty close. And then the other thing that I like to look for is the bottom, what we call the ground spot. And you can see how this one is still kind of yellowish and green in color. When this starts to turn almost an ivory or whitish color, that's also another good sign that this one is going to be probably ready to harvest. Some people will swear by knocking on it. I've never been able to make that work for me, but if you think it does, it makes a different sound, feel free to try. But I look for the tendril, and I look for that ground spot that starts to turn color. I think this one is probably at least 4 or 5 days away before we'd harvest that.
Okay, I also have seen that the fruit is very small, but also we have some misshapen watermelon. Why do you think that is, or why did that happen?
Yeah, it all goes back to pollination probably. So we'll show some pictures here of the different flowers, but we need bees to pollinate the flowers. And if enough pollen comes over to the flower that we can get fruit set, but maybe not enough to get the full size that we'd want, we can sometimes get a fruit that might be a little bit smaller than what we expected, or it can be misshapen. And that's usually an indication that not enough pollen moved over to the female flower to make a really big fruit that is what we were hoping for.
And what happened, for example, I know when to harvest, and I followed all the instructions that we were given. We know that we had good pollination, but what happened if the watermelon doesn't taste as good as I was expecting it to taste?
Right. If that's the case, you could have harvested at the wrong time. You might have been a little bit too anxious to harvest. But it's also, a lot of it is the season. And if you have a cool, rainy season, you don't have the sunlight and you don't have the photosynthate, so you don't have the sugars going into the fruit, that's going to lead to a bland melon.
And if I am irrigating the watermelon, is there a time where I should stop irrigating for the sweet?
That's a good question, because what you want to do, like what we see right here for this watermelon, which is probably, just as I said, within a week of harvest, this is when you want to turn the irrigation off. Of course, here in the Northeast, it rains a lot. We really can't always control it, but I would not be irrigating this melon at all. We want it to sort of concentrate those sugars, and that will make things sweeter.
And what do we do whenever we harvest it? Like, how do I storage it, or what is the right time? Is there a right time of the day to harvest it?
Usually the morning is probably the best time to harvest it, because at that point it's still cool. If we harvested late in the day, it's already picked up all the heat from the sun. And then what you're going to be battling that, then you're taking this, you're putting it into a refrigerator, it has to cool down. And all that time when that is 80 or 90 degrees, you can think about, once you harvest it, all of those sugars start to respire. So you want to start with a cool in the morning, and then put it right in the refrigerator. Surprisingly, these store really well. I've seen them store up to 2 to 3 weeks in a watermelon before they're cut. So you can keep them in there for a long time.
So hopefully these advices will help you to know when to harvest the watermelon, and you will get the sweetest as you can as watermelons. But thank you so much, Steve, for these advices. I think this will surely help everyone to know when is the right time to harvest them.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.